It's Knox, and I'm excited to be talking to you today about new features that are going to be coming to the CNDR, our Cloud Native Detect and Response. Very excited about this. We're moving forward, and we got some new things coming out, so let's jump right in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is my old joke that many of you have heard me make before, which is when we go to inventory here, I would make the joke that Kubernetes is so special that it got its own dropdown. Well, not quite so special anymore. If we look here, we've changed it, and now under inventory, it is no longer the Kubernetes category. It has been changed to a more generic title, which is containers. And maybe that will kind of tip you off to what some more of our features that we're going to be talking about coming up here are all about, and why we would need to do that. But underneath containers here, we still have all of the same tabs that we had before. We've got K8s workloads, we've got clusters, we've got scopes, we have network, and we still have images. And of course, images applies to all containers. And so that's why that one still just is images. So the reason that we've done this, and I don't want to get ahead of myself too much here, but we are adding support for containers beyond Kubernetes and beyond just Kubernetes clusters. And so to be able to make logical sense out of that, we decided to change this inventory to just the generic term containers. And that way it'll be able to encompass more than just Kubernetes. All right, so wanted to bring you over here to kind of explain what is changing with the way that one of the methods that we can deploy now the Linux sensor. So now, if you've been following along through CNDR, you'll know that we containerized the Carbon Black Linux sensor so that it can be run as a container inside a Linux machine. And that's how we're doing our CNDR for Kubernetes. But now we've taken that same concept, and now it doesn't matter where you're trying to run it at. So in other words, for this very simple example here, I have this Linux machine. Let's actually look at the top Linux machine first. So this Linux machine is running Ubuntu 20, and traditionally the Carbon Black Linux sensor is going to run. And by the way, this is to have this kind of container visibility. This begins at version 2.15. So the Carbon Black 2.15 Linux sensor has the ability to see inside the container engine and start giving visibility and telemetry from inside, from containers running inside Docker or Containerd, etc. Now, what we've done is we've taken that concept where we can containerize the Linux sensor, and we've added also the image scanner, and now you can deploy to a Linux machine the Linux sensor and that image scanner to be able to have visibility into your containers, into the Linux machine itself, and you'll be able to scan any of those images that are on this machine as well. So this will allow you, if you're running Docker Compose and you're running a service, let's say my example that I always use is, for instance, GitLab. So let's say that you need to run an internal GitLab inside your environment. So you've got a GitLab instance that you need to run internally for your team, and you're running it using Docker Compose on a singular Linux server, which is a legitimate way of running it. Well, now you can have a Linux sensor in this container and the image scanner. They run together as one container, and you can deploy it that way. And now your GitLab, you'll be able to monitor all your process monitoring, and you'll be able to scan the image on the GitLab to make sure that you're getting vulnerability scanning for it as well, to be able to know if there's vulnerabilities there for that container, and that's wonderful. And if we go back to the console, where this is at is going to be here. So there's going to be, if you go to Inventory Endpoints, and then you go to Sensor Options, you can see there is a new category here, which is Configure Containerized Sensors. And if we click on that, now we get a new wizard to be able to configure containerized sensors. And so you're going to want to pick either the newest version or something. This obviously it has to be past 2.15 to be able to have whatever, to be able to have the container visibility. That's what I'm trying to say. The sensor labels here So maybe you want to put like team, and you put it's the platform team. So maybe the key is team and the value is platform. And now we hit next. You can have a new API key or an existing API key. So right now it still says the Kubernetes because obviously those API permissions are going to be very similar. I'm just going to pick this one I've already got here, and I'm going to hit next. And so here's what's going to happen. We're going to have this help page set up here to learn more so that you can see exactly how to set this up for your environment. And you can flip here. This is all the information that you would need to be able to do it. It's got the API keys and all the things in here. You would want to flip between JSON or YAML to be able to see those things, right? And if we go back to JSON here, and then you can have the learn more right here, so you can learn more. And if you click on that, what that's going to help you do is depending on the environment where you're trying to deploy this. So maybe you want to deploy this in AWS in the Elastic Container Service, ECS, because you can do that. You're going to want to click on this learn more and learn how to be able to use the variables that are here and the things that are essential for the container to the CNDR container to run. And you're going to need to know how to give those variables to the Elastic Container Service so that it's able to utilize the container. If you're running Docker Compose, you're going to need to be able to give these environmental variables, and there's volumes that you're going to have to also set up, and all of that is in here, and you'll just have to add it. And obviously the method will be different depending on what kind of containerized runtime you're using, whether you're using Docker Compose, whether you're using that Elastic Container Service, or even some other way of running your containers. So there we go, and then we would hit done, and that setup would be complete. And now those endpoints would start to show up in your inventory. Now, if you're using public cloud, if it's ECS, it's going to be able to see that those are ECS machines, and they are going to be underneath this AWS tab, and that's where you're going to find them at. And you'll be able to start seeing processes, the container processes, and the hosts themselves immediately. All right, one of the other new features that I want to show you is a quality of life feature that we've added here. So here under our inventory, our new heading for containers instead of Kubernetes, remember, and then underneath our Kubernetes cluster tab, I have selected Jonathan's cluster that he has set up here in this particular organization. And if I click right here and select it, a new window pops up that we haven't had before, and it says one item selected, deselect all, and we have this take action. And if we click down, now we have this option to edit cluster from here. And when we look here, what this is going to do is now we are introducing the ability to be able to update or upgrade your Carbon Black CNDR from the console in the cluster. Now, obviously, there's a warning here because it says certain clusters may be managed by automated CI/CD infrastructure. Modifications may be overwritten unless you take manual steps to prevent it. And what that means is that depending on how your organization is set up, you may have a fancy DevOps team, and they may have a system to control your clusters that is declarative. And what that means is that if they have declared that cluster is to be a certain way and be configured a certain way, and then you try to update your cluster from here, it may come along right behind you and immediately change it right back. So you just need to be aware of that and need to talk to your platform team and see how they control their clusters. Now, if they deploy their clusters, and then once the clusters are deployed, they don't really have any power over making sure that configuration stays exactly the same, it's not checking, it's not using a GitOps methodology, then you're fine. You would be able to come in here and update from here and click save, and your CNDR deployment would update automatically. Understand that this is going to be a feature going forward, so your operator has to be updated to the version that contains this ability to update. And obviously, if your operator is not up to that version currently, it would have to be updated manually for this to be able to work. So once this has been released and you deploy to a new cluster and you're up to the operator version number that includes the feature for this update from the console, you're fine. But if you have older clusters that are running on the older operator, then this feature is not going to work on them, because this is going to be a going forward feature. But one that we have heard many people say they would like, and we're very glad that we've been able to add this. And so going forward, once we get this released, and once you get it into that operator version into your cluster, going forward, we'd be able to click the button and be able to modify that version from here in the console, which is really great. Another new feature that we are adding this time around is the ability to scan Windows images. So you can come in here in the CLI, you'll be able to download the Windows CLI, and this process would work exactly as before. You can come in here into the console. Let me show you if you don't know where that's at. So here under clusters, you're going to want to click on CLI config, and then you're going to want to go to, you either need to add a CLI. If you don't have API credentials already for scanning, you would go through this little wizard and create your API keys, and then make sure you download the version that you need, either for Mac or for Linux or for Windows. But what we are releasing this time around is the ability to scan Windows images. So now you can scan Windows images for vulnerabilities, just like you would the Linux images, which is really cool. So you can come in here, download the CLI to your Windows machine, and if you are running Windows images, you will now be able to scan them from your machine.